The most dangerous person you will ever meet may never raise their voice. They may sit across from you with perfect calm, speak gently, hold your gaze a second too long, and leave you doubting your own mind. Most people expect danger to be obvious. They imagine it arriving with noise, anger, or some visible fracture in the face. But some of the darkest personalities do not break into your life. They blend into it. They move with such ease that your first instinct is not fear, but fascination. You notice how composed they are, how cleanly they speak, how quickly they understand a room. In a culture full of anxious people, distracted people, people forever editing themselves before they speak, that kind of certainty can look almost rare. Sometimes it even feels magnetic. Maybe you meet them in a relationship, someone intense, attentive, strangely self-assured. They seem to understand people without effort. They know when to lean in, when to withdraw, when to make silence feel intimate. Or maybe you meet them at work, where confidence passes for competence long before character is ever examined. They make decisions quickly. They never seem troubled by moral hesitation. They know how to make boldness look like strength. At first, nothing clearly shatters. That is why these encounters are so difficult to name. The warning signs do not come all at once. They gather slowly, like cold entering a room. A remark lands with a chill that lingers longer than it should. A lie slips past with unsettling smoothness. There is a strange blankness in them. At the exact moment an ordinary person would soften. Even their apologies can feel complete on the surface and hollow underneath, as if the words arrived but the person never did. You register these things, but the mind resists its own conclusion. It keeps searching for a kinder explanation. Maybe they are wounded. Maybe they are guarded. Maybe they are emotionally unavailable. Maybe you are reading too much into it. Hope starts translating what instinct had already begun to understand. That is often how psychopathic personalities enter a life, not with visible horror, but with confusion. And confusion is powerful. It keeps people close to what should already feel distant. It delays clarity. It invites self-doubt. It makes you negotiate with patterns that should have been enough on their own. Most human beings, even selfish or deeply flawed ones, live with some form of inner resistance. They may betray trust, lie under pressure, lash out in anger, or fail the people who love them. But somewhere inside there is usually friction. Shame appears. Regret appears. At the very least, another person's pain still has enough reality to disturb the moment. Psychopathy is disturbing for a different reason. What is missing is not intelligence. Many psychopaths are highly intelligent. What is missing is not charm, because some are extraordinarily charming, and it is not ambition either. The absence lies deeper than all of that. What is missing is the inward break that stops most people from turning another human being into an object. Robert Hare, one of the most influential researchers on psychopathy, described the psychopath as profoundly lacking empathy, guilt, and genuine emotional attachment. Once you understand that, the whole pattern becomes harder to romanticize. You stop asking why such a person can hurt others so easily, and begin asking what is absent within them that would normally make such harm difficult. This is why the subject is so unsettling. It is not simply that psychopaths can be cruel. Cruelty by itself can still be emotional. A cruel person may be jealous, reactive, wounded, unstable, or consumed by rage. Psychopathy feels colder than that. There is often a stillness to it. Harm is not always committed in a storm of feeling. Sometimes it is carried out with composure, with patience, with the detached focus of someone rearranging furniture. And that changes the moral atmosphere around them. Because most of us navigate human life through shared emotional assumptions. We assume that if someone speaks of love, the word points to something real inside them. If they apologize, we assume some part of them is burdened. If they see us in pain, we expect a certain human interruption, some small sign that our suffering has entered their awareness and altered them. With a psychopathic personality, that interruption may never arrive. This is where the deepest confusion begins. You keep trying to understand them through your own emotional architecture. You interpret their language as if words must still be anchored to feeling. You imagine that if they knew what they were doing clearly enough, they would change. You search for a conscience using your own as the measuring instrument. But not everyone is standing on the same interior ground. The philosopher Simone Weil once wrote, "Imaginary evil is romantic and varied. Real evil is gloomy, monotonous, barren, boring." That line matters here because people expect danger to look dramatic. They expect obvious menace, some theatrical darkness, a visible crack in the mask. But real predatory behavior is often flatter than that. It can be emotionally dry, socially polished, and disturbingly ordinary in its presentation. That is one reason psychopaths can move through modern life so easily. Modern culture is unusually vulnerable to surfaces. We are trained to react to energy before ethics, image before substance, momentum before depth. Confidence is mistaken for character. Charm is mistaken for emotional intelligence. Ruthlessness is often rewarded as decisiveness, especially in environments where outcomes matter more than motives. This is not only a private, psychological problem, it has social consequences. A world obsessed with status becomes fertile ground for the conscience, free. A culture that worships winning without asking what kind of soul is doing the winning begins to create strange incentives. It starts selecting for performance over integrity. It becomes easier for manipulative personalities to rise in corporations, politics, media, and even intimate social circles, not because they are better human beings, but because they are less constrained by the inner costs that stop most people from stepping on others. You can feel this in ordinary life now. The pressure to appear exceptional, the celebration of people who seem untouchable, the way some personalities are admired simply because nothing seems to shake them. But there is a difference between peace and emptiness. There is a difference between emotional regulation and emotional vacancy. From a distance, they can look similar. Up close, they are not the same at all. A grounded person creates steadiness around them. A psychopathic person may create tension disguised as charisma. Their calm does not soothe, it unsettles. Their eye contact can feel a little too fixed. Their warmth may arrive exactly when it is useful, then vanish when the room no longer requires it. Their confidence may seem compelling at first, but over time you notice that nothing truly vulnerable ever passes through it. The body often detects these things before language can catch up. That matters more than people realize. Your nervous system is not always irrational when it feels uneasy around someone who appears socially perfect. There are forms of danger that do not announce themselves to reason first. They appear as fatigue after conversation, mental fog after conflict, or the peculiar sensation of being watched rather than understood. Many people ignore these signals because they do not fit the story they have been told about harm. Harm, they think, should feel clear. It should look ugly. It should leave obvious evidence. But predatory people often do their deepest damage without ever becoming visibly monstrous. They create erosion rather than explosion. They alter your perception rather than simply attacking your body. They make you second guess what you know. And once self-doubt enters, the rest becomes easier. This is why psychopathic personalities often leave behind the same invisible debris: confusion, exhaustion, overanalysis, and a painful separation from one's own instincts. People close to them begin explaining too much, apologizing too quickly, and doubting what once felt obvious. Conversations turn into mazes. Reality starts to feel negotiable. The more sincere person becomes trapped in endless interpretation, while the less sincere person keeps shaping the terms of the exchange. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In relationships with predatory personalities, this becomes painfully relevant. If you do not understand the pattern, you may keep giving it softer names. You may call manipulation intensity. You may call control protection. You may treat emptiness as mystery. You may mistake exploitation for a difficult form of love. And by the time you find the right language, you may already be standing inside a life that no longer feels like your own. That is one of the darker truths about human behavior. Conscience can be exploited. A manipulative person does not always target your weaknesses in the obvious sense. Sometimes they target your strengths, your patience, your empathy, your reluctance to judge harshly, your willingness to listen longer than most people would. A person with no inner break can use the very qualities that make you human as openings through which to gain access. This is why victims of such personalities are often misunderstood. Outsiders look at the situation and ask why they stayed, why they explained, why they gave so many chances. But that question is too shallow. The real answer is psychological. The victim was not relating only to what the person was. They were also relating to possibility, to hope, to the image of who the person might become, if only enough understanding reached them. Hope can become a trap when it is tied to someone who experiences intimacy as leverage rather than mutual reality. And that brings us to one of the most painful facts about psychopathy imitation. Many psychopathic personalities do not lack the ability to perform emotion. What they lack is the genuine moral core behind it. They can learn the language of remorse, tenderness, loyalty, and love without being inwardly governed by any of those things. This is what makes them so disorienting. A visibly cold person is easier to keep at a distance, but a person who can imitate warmth while using it strategically can stay close for years. Hervé Cleckley famously wrote of the mask of sanity, and the phrase still captures something essential. The surface can be polished. The social behavior can appear normal, even appealing, but the appearance is not the same as the structure beneath it. When someone can speak beautifully about values they never intend to live by, language itself becomes dangerous in their hands. This is why conversations with such people can feel so strange. You are listening for sincerity. They may be speaking for effect. You are trying to resolve reality. They are often trying to manage it. You are searching for what is true. They are watching for what works. And once words are cut loose from conscience, they can be used for almost anything. Affection becomes leverage. Confession becomes theater. Vulnerability becomes bait. Promises become sedation. The relationship starts looking less like a meeting of two souls and more like a psychological environment, carefully arranged to keep one person off balance. The philosopher Hannah Arendt warned of the frightening normality with which destructive forces can appear in human life. That insight belongs here too. Not all danger looks savage. Sometimes it looks polished, practical, well-dressed, and socially fluent. That is precisely why it gets so far. Of course, not every selfish or manipulative person is a psychopath. Life is more complex than a single label. Some people are narcissistic. Some are traumatized. Some are impulsive, immature, addicted, avoidant, or morally weak. Human beings can wound one another for many reasons, but complexity should never be used to erase patterns that are already clear. You do not need a clinical diagnosis to notice that someone repeatedly lies, exploits, dominates, and remains untouched by the consequences they create for others. In the end, the label matters less than the pattern. So what protects a person from this kind of distortion? Not cynicism. Cynicism is too blunt to be wise. It makes the heart hard and the mind suspicious, but it does not necessarily make perception clearer. It often turns everything dark, which is just another way of losing reality. The answer is something more disciplined: discernment. Discernment does not mean assuming the worst about everyone. It means refusing to argue with what repeated patterns have already shown you. It means paying attention not just to words, but to emotional consequence. It means noticing how your inner life changes around someone. Do you leave contact with them more grounded, more truthful, more alive? Or do you leave feeling diminished, foggy, guilty, and strangely far from yourself? That question is more valuable than long analysis. Healthy presence tends to deepen you. Predatory presence tends to hollow you out. This is where philosophy becomes practical. Boundaries are not acts of hatred. They are acts of truth. They say I am no longer willing to translate repeated harm into temporary confusion. I am no longer interested in preserving a mask that my nervous system has already stopped believing. I do not need one final revelation, one final apology, or one final conversation to justify protecting what is left of my clarity. A manipulative personality feeds on fog, on delays, on mixed signals, on your desire to be fair long after fairness has stopped being mutual. Clarity weakens that system, not all at once, but enough to change the atmosphere. You start noticing that warmth returns when control is threatened. You see that apologies come without transformation. You understand that their interest in your emotions rises when those emotions can still be used. And gradually, the spell breaks, not because the predator suddenly reveals a secret self, but because you stop participating in the illusion. You stop searching for depth where there is only appetite. You stop romanticizing emotional emptiness as mystery. You stop mistaking destabilization for chemistry, possession for love, or intensity for intimacy. This does not mean becoming cold yourself. In fact, that may be the final challenge of the whole encounter, to remain human without becoming available for consumption. Nietzsche wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that, in the process, he does not become a monster." People often hear that line and think only of violence, but there is another meaning hidden in it. If you are not careful, predatory people can pull you toward two opposite mistakes. Either you stay too open and get slowly erased, or you become so defended that nothing genuine can reach you anymore. Both are forms of loss. The wiser path is narrower. You keep empathy, but you pair it with sight. You remain kind, but you stop confusing kindness with surrender. You continue believing in human depth, but you no longer assume it in everyone. That is not bitterness. It is maturity earned the hard way, and maybe that is the real lesson here. Psychopaths disturb us not only because of the damage they cause, but because they reveal what ordinary life quietly depends on: trust, conscience, mutual recognition, the invisible moral fabric that makes one person feel real to another. Without those things, relationships do not disappear. They become simulations. They turn into strategy, appetite, transaction, and control. A person can still smile, persuade, attract, seduce, and rise in status while remaining internally untouched by what makes connection sacred. That is why such encounters feel so haunting. You are not simply meeting a difficult person. You are meeting the possibility of human form with a missing center. Once you see that clearly, your task is no longer obsession. It is return. Return to your own perception. Return to your own boundaries. Return to the quiet part of you that noticed something was wrong before your mind found the courage to name it. Some people do not need more access to your heart. They need less access to your life. Some doors do not need one final explanation. They need to close. If this subject feels unsettling, it should. It touches one of the darkest truths in psychology, that there are people who can move among others with intelligence, charm, and social fluency, while lacking the inner restraints most of us take for granted. But that truth does not have to leave you paranoid. It can leave you clearer, and clarity, quietly protected, may be one of the strongest forms of self-respect you ever learn. If this gave language to something you have felt but never fully understood, stay close to Silent Mind Academy, not for noise, for the kind of awareness that helps you protect your inner life in a world where not every smile means safety.